A wedding is the ultimate highlight for any woman, but today we're looking at what happens when a prank enters the mix, and why that might not be the best combo ever. From a slippery dance floor prank at the reception to several pounds of dry ice dumped into a bridal suite, slowly replacing the oxygen in the room. This is Nathan, and welcome back to Fatal Files. It was March 14th, 2017, in Ashford, Tennessee. A wedding reception was in full swing at a rented event hall just outside the city. Dinner was done, the toasts were out of the way, and the night had shifted into that part of the evening where the music gets louder and nobody is really watching the clock anymore. You know the type of person who just handles things without being asked? That was Aubrey Golson. She was 28, worked as a coordinator at a dental office in Ashford, and had been there about 4 years by the time she got engaged. She remembered your birthday, the thing you mentioned once in passing, the favor you forgot you even asked for. Never made a big deal out of any of it. Not the kind of person you meet every day, honestly. She and her fiancé, Derek, had been together 3 years before he proposed. They kept the wedding simple. Around 90 guests, close friends and family, a rented hall about 12 miles from where they lived. But if you asked Aubrey what she was most looking forward to, she would tell you without hesitating. The dancing. The reception was the part she genuinely could not wait for. Her friends took that to heart. For weeks, they had been quietly rehearsing a surprise, choreographed dance for her, practicing in someone's living room on weekends. The plan was to pull her onto the floor mid-reception and give her a moment she would never forget. Really thoughtful thing to do. A guest, not part of the wedding party, but someone the groom had grown up with, showed up during the afternoon setup under the pretense of helping out. Staff were short-handed and focused on getting tables dressed and the bar stocked. Nobody was watching the floor. He poured cooking oil across sections of the hardwood in a thin, uneven coat, thinking people would slip. Everyone would laugh. It would be the funniest story from the night. He did not tell anyone. The oil had hours to settle into the wood grain before guests arrived, and under reception lighting, it was completely invisible. Nobody caught it. At around 9:40, Aubrey's friends gave the DJ the signal. She laughed, kicked off her heels, and jumped right in. About 45 seconds into the routine, she went into a spin and planted her right foot to stop. The floor gave her nothing. Her foot shot forward, her body twisted hard to the left, and she came down with full force on her side. The fall drove the lower left of her abdomen straight into the corner edge of the platform. 6-inch drop, bad angle, and all her weight behind it. Most guests laughed because it looked like a stumble. Aubrey got up on her own, waved everyone off, said she was fine. I mean, if someone gets up laughing after a fall, you are not exactly going to chase them down about it. She was smiling as she walked away. Her friends felt awful, but she was convincing enough that nobody pushed. She went back to her seat and stayed there the rest of the night, which, if you knew Aubrey, was already strange. She never left the dance floor voluntarily. Over the next hour, she got quieter. Around 11:15, Derek noticed she had gone pale. She said her stomach hurt and that something felt off. A few minutes later, she lost consciousness at the table. Internal bleeding does not announce itself the way other injuries do. When Aubrey hit that platform edge, a blood vessel in her abdomen ruptured from the impact. Her body was compensating the whole time she sat there smiling and hugging guests. By the time anyone understood what was happening, there was nothing left to do. Aubrey Golson was pronounced dead later that night. The cooking oil was found during the venue walkthrough afterward. Security footage from that afternoon placed the guest on the dance floor during setup. It was questioned by authorities and did not deny it. The incident was ultimately ruled accidental and no charges were filed. Kind of cruel when you think about it. She spent months counting down to that moment, and it was the last one she had. Not far from that same thinking, a lakeside wedding in late October, and groomsmen who treated the water like it was part of the entertainment. It was October 18th, 2016, in Calverton, Virginia. The ceremony had just ended at an outdoor lakeside venue, and guests were filtering inside for the reception. The sky had been overcast since morning, and the temperature sitting around 54 degrees. Grayson Ellesmere was 31 and had been teaching second grade at a small elementary school in Calverton for 6 years. She was the kind of teacher parents specifically requested when they had a younger kid coming up through the grades. Patient, genuinely invested, the type who remembered which kid was nervous on the first day and made a point of checking in. Outside of school, she spent most of her free time outdoors, hiking, kayaking, long weekends near the water. Being outside was just how she reset. The lakeside venue was her idea from the start, and nobody who knew her was surprised by that. She had talked about it long before Damien even proposed. The ceremony was held on a wooden deck extending over the water, and the whole setup was exactly what she had pictured. Around 80 guests, mostly people they had known for years. Damien had 5 groomsmen, all friends from college, the kind of group that had spent the last decade finding new ways to mess with each other. Harmless stuff for the most part, the kind of friendships built on everyone having something on everyone else. Nobody in that group thought twice about a prank. During cocktail hour, one of them came up with it. The plan was to get Grayson down to the dock, tell her Damien wanted a first look photo by the water before the light was completely gone, and have someone fake a stumble into her just close enough to the edge to make her think she was going in. Pull back at the last second. Simple, stupid, the kind of thing that becomes a story you tell at every birthday for the next 10 years. To make it more believable, they looped in one of the bridesmaids to be the one who actually brought Grayson down there, so it would not look suspicious coming from the groomsmen alone. The dock stretched about 15 feet out over the lake with no railing along the sides. Grayson came down around 5:20, full cathedral-length gown, layered skirt, long train. The bridesmaid hung back near the steps. 3 of the groomsmen were already on the dock with a camera to sell the photo idea. What none of them thought about was the water. Mid-October in that part of Virginia, the lake sits somewhere between 52 and 58 degrees Fahrenheit. It does not look cold. It does not look like anything dangerous. It just looks like water. The groomsmen moved in and misjudged the force completely. Her heel caught a warped plank at the edge of the dock, and she went in. Not a stumble, not a near miss. She was fully in the water before anyone processed what had just happened. The gown soaked through almost instantly. Have you ever tried to move in water with that much wet fabric wrapped around your entire body? She was fighting it from the very first second. The shouting from the deck above started immediately. 2 of the groomsmen went in after her without even really thinking about it, which is the only reasonable reaction when you watch someone go under. Cold shock is not something most people know about until they experience it or hear about it this way. When a body hits water that cold, it triggers an involuntary gasp. Muscles lose coordination almost immediately, and breathing becomes something you suddenly cannot control, no matter how hard you try. It kicks in within the first 30 seconds. Grayson came up once and went under again before they reached her. They got her out in under 4 minutes, but she was already unresponsive when they pulled her onto the dock. She did not make it. Between the cold shock and the weight of that gown, she never had a real chance once she hit the water. All 5 groomsmen were spoken to that night. The incident was ruled accidental, but the groomsman responsible was required to appear before a civil hearing brought by Grayson's family the following year. Nothing criminal came of it. The groomsmen thought it was going to be the funniest moment of the wedding. In a way, it was the most memorable, just not how any of them pictured it. Somewhere else entirely, a best friend was about to make the same kind of mistake with a cake and a bad idea. Always appreciate seeing people come back for another episode. Supporting Fatal Files with a subscription helps more than you probably realize. It was June 7th, 2017, in Macon, Georgia, a wedding. Reception was about an hour in at a rented event hall near the edge of the city. The ceremony had gone smoothly, guests were on their second round of drinks, and the room was loud in the way receptions get when everyone is actually having a good time. Kendall Bruver was 29. She worked as a leasing consultant at a residential property management company and had been there about 3 years. She was the kind of person who could walk into any room and just immediately make people comfortable. Not in a performative way, it was just genuinely who she was. Her friends were the center of her life, and she had kept the same core group since high school through every move, every job change, every rough patch. The kind of friendships that do not need maintenance because they just hold. Her best friend Kate had been in her life the longest. They met in 9th grade and had been close ever since, in that way where you stop keeping track of how long it has been because it stops mattering. Kate was maid of honor without any discussion. She was also, by everyone's account, the one in the group most likely to take something too far for a laugh. Not mean about it, just always looking for the bit. Always had been. We all have a friend like that, one who never really knows when to stop. Usually it is fine, but this was not one of those times. So when Kate came across confetti cakes online a few months before the wedding, she immediately thought of Kendall. They were everywhere on social media around that time. 2016 into 2017, the kind of video that kept showing up on everyone's feeds. A regular looking wedding cake with a compressed air mechanism mechanism built into the interior that fires confetti outward the moment the knife cuts through a specific trigger layer inside. Kate ordered one from a party supplies company, thought it would be a perfect surprise moment at the cake cutting, and left it at that initially. The problem was, she decided it was not enough. About 3 weeks before the wedding, Kate went online and ordered 2 additional CO2 cartridges, the small threaded kind used in bike tire inflators, thinking she could pack them into the base of the cake alongside the existing mechanism to get a bigger release. She had watched a few videos online and figured it was straightforward enough. The cartridges were small, cheap, and easy to get. She punctured the foil seal on each one slightly so they would release on impact rather than needing a valve, then packed them into the hollowed base of the cake against the existing mechanism. Her thinking was more pressure meant a bigger pop and a better reaction from Kendall. She did not think past that. The cake was swapped in during cocktail hour while catering staff were clearing dinner tables. Kate handled it herself, and nobody questioned her because the maid of honor moving around the venue looked completely normal. The cake cutting was scheduled for around 8:45. Kendall and her husband James moved to the table while guests crowded around with phones out. The photographer was crouched slightly to the left to get the angle. Kate was standing right beside the cake table, ready to watch Kendall's reaction up close, which was exactly where she had pictured herself when she came up with the whole thing. Kendall picked up the knife and cut into it. The release was immediate and nothing like the videos Kate had watched. The 2 additional cartridges had been packed tight against the existing mechanism, and when the trigger layer gave way, everything went off at once with nowhere for the pressure to distribute evenly. The force blew straight outward through the front of the cake. Kendall was standing directly in front of it, maybe 14 inches away, which is just how close you naturally stand when you are cutting a cake. Several guests described the sound as closer to a crack than a pop. The blast caught her directly in the chest. The force was enough to cause a fatal cardiac concussion, essentially a blunt trauma disruption to the heart's rhythm triggered by sudden impact to the chest wall. Kendall stumbled backward and went down. Guests nearest to her reached her within seconds. She was conscious at first and looked confused more than anything. Someone from the catering staff called for help while others cleared space. She lost consciousness a short time later. By the time authorities arrived, Kate had already told the venue staff what she had done. Investigators pulled apart the cake remnants, and the modified cartridges told the whole story anyway. She was questioned over the following days. Kendall was pronounced dead that night, and the case was closed as accidental. The surprise lasted less than a second and still became the only thing anyone remembered about the reception afterward. At the next wedding, someone thought reading a fake breakup letter into a microphone to watch the bride's face was a solid idea. It was September 3rd, 2016, in Billings, Montana. The reception had been going for about 2 hours, dinner was mostly cleared, the bar was open, and the DJ had just started taking requests. That point in the night where everything is loud and loose, and nobody is really thinking about anything except having a good time. Tierney Oldfield was 32. She managed the front desk at a chiropractic clinic and had been there close to 5 years. Outside of work, she cooked constantly. Weekend dinners at her apartment, game nights that turned into full meals, holidays where she insisted on making everything herself even when people told her not to bother. Her place was just where everyone ended up. Food was how she showed people she cared. She and Caleb had been together 5 years before he proposed. Tierney planned most of the reception herself and got genuinely specific about it in a way her friends found pretty funny. Weeks going back and forth with catering over details most people would never notice. Around 200 guests, formal sit-down dinner, dance floor big enough for everyone to actually use. She wanted it to feel less like a rented hall and more like one of her dinner parties just scaled way up. Her younger brother Dylan was 3 years younger and had been the prank guy his whole life. Fake parking tickets, hot sauce swapped into ketchup bottles, plastic spiders in kitchen cabinets. The kind of person you automatically blame before you even know what happened. He and Tierney had the same sense of humor, and she had always been a good sport about it, which probably gave him way more confidence than he should have had going into her wedding night. A few weeks out, Dylan came up with the idea with a couple of groomsmen. The best man would grab the mic after dinner and read a fake letter from Caleb saying he had changed his mind. Caleb was in on it. The groomsmen thought it was hilarious. Dylan figured Tierney would be confused for maybe 10 seconds before she caught on, and then they would all laugh about it for years. Pretty standard thinking for someone who has never once considered how a joke actually lands on the other end. The best man grabbed the mic a little after 8, said he had something he needed to share, and asked for everyone's attention. Then Then he read the letter, detailed enough to sound real. The room went quiet fast, and a lot of guests just did not know what to make of it. Tierney did not hesitate. She heard it and believed it immediately. She had barely eaten all day from nerves, had been running on adrenaline since that morning, and hearing those words read out loud in a room full of people with phones pointed at her just broke through every filter she had. She put her glass down and walked away from the head table without saying a word. A few people assumed she was playing along. Her bridesmaids looked at each other, but nobody moved right away because the room was still waiting for a punchline that felt like it was coming any second. She slipped out through a side door into a back hallway, away from the music, away from the guests, away from all of it. That was where it started. The crying, the hyperventilating, the chest tightening past the point where it was just emotion. Her inhaler was back in her bridal bag at the head table. She had just been sitting right there. By the time her bridesmaids started feeling like something was genuinely off and went looking, it had already been too long. They found her in the hallway and called for help immediately. What nobody at that reception knew, including Caleb, was that Tierney had a history of stress-triggered asthma. Not severe enough to slow her down day to day, but enough that she always kept an inhaler close. That night, it was sitting in her bridal bag at the head table the whole time. Nobody knew to go looking for it because nobody knew she had even left. Caleb had been waiting for his cue to come back out laughing, but it never came. Dylan knew before anyone told him. You can tell when a joke has gone somewhere. It was never supposed to go. Tierney Oldfield was pronounced dead that night from respiratory failure brought on by a severe asthma attack. Dylan and the groomsmen were questioned afterward. Nothing was filed. Nobody intended for any of it to happen, and the whole thing was ruled accidental. Dylan thought he was setting up a story people would laugh about for years. Instead, a fake letter killed his sister. The night was almost over at the next wedding too, and upstairs in the bridal suite, someone thought a heavy layer of fog would be a nice final touch. It was November 11th, 2017, in Fairmont, Oregon. The reception had mostly wrapped up by the time guests started drifting back toward the hotel rooms connected to the venue. The music downstairs had gotten quieter, older relatives were leaving, and the bridal party had shifted into that tired end-of-night mood where everyone is basically running on adrenaline and caffeine. Jorah Elwick was 28 and worked as an administrative assistant for a property management company in Fairmont. She was extremely detail-oriented, the type of person who made spreadsheets for vacations and printed backups just in case the first copies somehow disappeared. Her friends joked that she treated every event like a project she was personally managing. To be honest, they were not wrong. She planned nearly every part of the wedding herself, from seating arrangements down to handwritten schedules for vendors and family members. But she was also very close with her family, especially her cousin Maren. They grew up a few blocks apart and spent most holidays together. Maren had been heavily involved throughout the wedding planning process and took her role seriously. Decorations, favors, last-minute errands, the random problems every wedding seems to have a few hours before guests arrive. She handled a lot of it. By the end of the reception, she was still trying to think of ways to make the night feel special for Jorah after months of stress leading up to the wedding. The bridal suite had been reserved at a small hotel attached to the venue property. It included a large bathroom with a built-in jacuzzi tub near the back wall. Earlier that week, Maren had seen videos online of people using dry ice to create fog effects in pools and hot tubs. It looked harmless, just thick white fog spilling over the sides like something out of a movie. If you were around online back then, you probably remember it. People used dry ice for party effects constantly around 2016 and 2017. And to be fair to Maren, most people watching those videos back then probably would have thought the exact same thing she did. So before the reception ended, she stopped at a grocery store a few miles away and bought several pounds of dry ice packed inside a foam cooler. Her idea was simple. Fill the jacuzzi with hot water, add the dry ice, let the room fill with fog, and surprise Jorah with something relaxing waiting upstairs after the reception. Around 11:40 that night, Maren went up to the suite while guests were still downstairs saying their goodbyes. She filled the jacuzzi with steaming water and dropped chunks of dry ice directly into it. The fog effect worked immediately. Thick white vapor rolled over the edges of the tub and spread across the bathroom floor exactly how she pictured it. What she did not understand was what was actually causing the fog. fog. Dry ice is frozen carbon dioxide, and as it warms, it releases CO2 gas into the air. Normally, that is not a huge problem outdoors or in open rooms because the gas disperses pretty quickly. But this bathroom was small, warm, and poorly ventilated. Once the door stayed shut for several minutes, the air inside started changing fast. By the time Jorah and her husband finally got upstairs just after midnight, the suite already smelled strange, according to later witness statements. Not strong exactly, just stale enough that her husband briefly opened a window near the bed area. Maren excitedly pointed them toward the bathroom before heading back downstairs to gather decorations and leftover items from the reception hall. Jorah stepped inside alone, still wearing most of her reception clothes. The bathroom door slid shut behind her. Carbon dioxide is heavier than normal air, so inside the closed bathroom, it started settling lower around the tub and floor area first. That is part of what makes situations like this so dangerous. There is no dramatic warning sign. People often become dizzy or disoriented before they even realize something is wrong. About 10 minutes later, her husband noticed she had not come back out. He knocked several times and got no response before forcing the bathroom door open. Guests nearby later said the fog was still hanging low across the floor when he found her unresponsive beside the jacuzzi. Jorah Elwick died later that night. The cause was determined to be accidental asphyxiation caused by carbon dioxide displacement from the dry ice inside the enclosed bathroom. Maren fully cooperated with authorities and admitted she had set up the fog effect as a surprise for the bridal suite. Investigators ultimately ruled the death accidental and no charges were filed. That's probably the hardest part of this one. Nobody there thought they were setting up something dangerous. To them, it was just supposed to be one last nice surprise before the wedding night was over.